Wow. Wow.
That was a special request from my daughter. She's like, Dad, do a sock puppet for your podcast. Yes, it's a great idea.
Oh my God. So like you actually have convinced her that was a sock puppet move?
You know what? Hi, John. Hey, how are you?
The other hand, your finger's not even in there. You got to get both going.
It's going. Oh. Hello. She's watching. I got approval. Anyways.
All right. Well, that's all that matters then.
All that matters. My day is made. I can relax. Well, wake up and deliver some sock news. Too much fun, John. We're having too much fun. Episode
you got to start the week right,
Season 3, episode 10. We're starting off the week right. We're ready to rock and roll. We got some great stuff as always. Thanks everybody for joining us, and good morning to everybody. Let's get the show going. Get some reactions from John. Get some energy fired up in here. Jono.
When I decided to get my CDL at 21 years old, especially since I did it on a whim, about a year ago, I was really struggling, really struggling. I remember this one day, all I could afford was ramen noodles and instant grits for my 2-week grocery budget, and all I had were pennies to pay for this. So there in the grocery store, I cried as I counted them in front of the cashier. It rung up to about $6, so that was awful. My only vehicle, which was my financial security blanket, broke down on me on the highway, and I had to sell it for just like $500. And now the final straw to this decision of becoming a truck driver was when my boyfriend broke up with me, and honestly, I don't blame him. So not 10 minutes after he broke up with me by text, I called up my best friend's mom, who happens to be a truck driver, and I asked, "What do I need to do to become a trucker?" It's been an incredibly tough journey, but I've found nothing good comes easy for me. But I'm really proud of how far I've come since November of 2024. So that's why people...
That's cool.
I think it's a cool one.
Yeah, you know what? It's funny though, actually, because it highlights for, probably a story that's common for a lot of people, right? They get into that industry, right? I don't think it's any news to a lot of people that you very often get sort of like new people to a country, people who've just immigrated, getting into trucking or getting into some of these service type industries, because they're not always viewed maybe the same way by people who have been born in those countries or whatever. But they're like key roles for infrastructure, and they're needed, and they had paid well. The funny thing though is these days, we're finding that logistics like transportation and delivery no longer seems to get that type of love about thinking that it should be paid well for those sacrifices.
Where is my 1980s movies of truck drivers being these, big guys taking care of things, Sylvester Stallone, over the top? Like, it was awesome. It was the golden age of trucking, You made a lot of money. A guy on the road can feed his family, have toys, have fun, enjoy life. It was fantastic. But to your point, now it's more of a meagerness than it is an actual lucrative position. A lot of immigrants did, jump on it, and that's why you have different communities. And you can see with immigration waves in Canada and the United States of which of the predominant truck drivers at a certain age, stage, and then which ones needed it because they couldn't have entries into the job. A 21-year-old right now makes sense. They can't find work. It makes sense that they're looking for something, and they might not have the means for an education in the United States. And this is an easy entry barrier for them to make a living.
Yeah, for sure. Actually, funny enough, over the weekend, I saw I don't know if you've seen these new class of memes that are going around. It's like they'll post like a picture of one of the CEOs from like the AI firms or whatever, and he's got this guy like whispering in his ear. He's like, another 21-year-old just found a job, and he's like sitting there all mad, like, you know what I mean? Like that's their target, spot in organizations. It's not funny, and I'm not making light of it, but I mean, it is kind of a real juxtaposition where, you're getting tighter focuses from a lot of corporations, obviously valuing experience, wanting very quick ROI. I mean, I think if you're preparing for any type of job interview, whatever, or you see these, posts all over the network, people talking about, well, like, show your value, show what you can do. You know what I mean? And, you just get these people that are new to the space. And it's like, it's not so easy to be able to do that anymore.
I'm curious to see when the land of opportunity shifts. The United States is going through this kind of turmoil. I see Europe opening up a little bit more with opportunity, because they're realizing they have to get caught up in the innovation space, and then it's going to be like different opportunities happening also. But you're also seeing a lot of it in Asia and India and Africa and Latin America, where I think you're going to see a lot of North Americans start going to the expatriates to these other places and bring a lot of the things that they're doing here into those markets, and quite quickly. Yeah,
possibly, or even targeting those markets, right, specifically for different types of reasons and stuff like that, about like, oh, you know what, like, just because I'm American or just because I'm Canadian, why do I have to essentially try to like launch at home or launch in the US? Like, why am I not focused on Europe? Why am I not focused on Asia or something like that instead?
I mean, language barriers are so much smaller nowadays than ever before. Like, you can translate everything so quickly, and you can talk almost.
I would say there's no digital barrier when it comes to like language. I mean, person, like face to face for sure, but I mean, emails, texts, Slack messages, whatever. Like, everything just translates everything now.
I know it's gonna be a hot topic because we're just talking about truck drivers, but even language on when you're talking to someone, like, you could really just have that phone there, and it can really translate everything for you.
Oh yeah.
And there's ways to have everything that you're looking at visually translate to the language that you're speaking. And we've talked about it before. Symbols are universal. So road signs, which are majority of them are symbols, are universal, right?
Yeah, well, the well-designed ones anyway, for sure. You know what I mean? Because there's definitely some suspect ones out there. But it's funny because you bringing that up, like about kind of the wages, because over the weekend, I don't know if you noticed, but I made a post about Skip the Dishes and how Skip the Dishes was like shutting down their express lane service, which was kind of like a 30 minutes or less, like groceries and essentials to your door. And that's a little bit different than their model was a little bit different than like Instacart, in the sense that it was more like what DoorDash is doing with Dash stores or whatever they call them, micro warehouses, and trying to get them out. And they basically just said like, kind of demand is softened, not really sustainable. And I just, for whatever reason, for the last maybe, 1 to 2 weeks, this has felt like such a trend. These, so many comments around like delivery, ultra fast delivery, autonomous delivery, all of these things. And people just don't seem to understand these like fundamental, like real world pressures when it comes to the need for infrastructure to make this stuff happen. But then everyone like just essentially not being able to afford it with these weak models that they're putting out there.
Well, not only that, and the ability to be able to purchase all this stuff and have it quickly, right?
Yeah.
So people are not using Skip the Dishes and Uber Eats as frequently as they were before, because they don't have the excess money to do it. They're having a challenged time. Like, I think was I talking to you, or I was talking to someone recently. Even me, my gas. I have a VW Jetta. It burns nicely. $50 used to be to fill it up. Now it's almost $100. I second guess going to Toronto and how often, because I'm going to burn an extra $150 in gas.
Yeah, like, so it's just that much more impactful for like every meeting, or everything that was a little bit of an easier yes becomes a little bit of a harder yes, or maybe dips into the nose. Even
which I'm going to bring it back to like the gig workers and the truck drivers.
Yeah.
Their impact is far greater, because there is fuel surcharge help, but that doesn't compensate the difference of the actual fuel. It's not like it's a 1-to-1 ratio. Right. So
for sure. And I mean, there's like all kinds of like burn, like, well, you're idling, you're burning, you're in traffic and going slower than you should be, you're burning. Like, you know what I mean? Like, people seem to miss the fact that like not every mile or not every kilometer or not every engine hour is essentially the same when it comes to fuel efficiency. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So, those are interesting things. And then, setting up a lot of these infrastructure businesses, or having a lot of this inventory, because that's another thing that I'm finding lately. Especially, I feel bad for a lot of these like smaller e-com brands or whatever that I feel like they're just getting lured into these traps of, fast delivery, inventory everywhere. That's what you got to do. And they just have no real idea of how expensive that's going to get. Like I saw, have you heard of Flying Tiger? The Flying Tiger Copenhagen, I guess, is the full name of this store.
No.
So I hadn't heard of them either up until this summer when I was actually in Portugal, and I saw one in Portugal and I went into it and I was like, oh, it's very interesting. Anyways, the reason why I bring it up is because they're actually opening their first Canadian store in June in Toronto. And it's kind of like, like Miniso.
Flying Tiger.
Yeah, like Miniso kind of. I would say it's probably a little bit more like Miniso than anything else, but a little bit different in the sense that, obviously where some of those kind of fast retailers are obviously sort of China oriented. These guys are a little bit different just because of the fact that their designs are Danish, but they still are in low cost, but they sell more towards like home goods and toys and gifts and seasonal items. But the wild thing with these guys is that they produce about 300 new products a monthly, and they still use it. And they've kind of joined in this kind of like TJ Maxx Winners style approach to their business, which is like treasure hunting. So they have a high inventory turnover, a lot of like in and out products to do it. And they really target Gen Z and millennials. So going after a different market segment than a lot of other people. But it highlights, for example, like the real strategic differences between, if you're a small brand, you're trying to build a brand or you have a stable product versus, even an organization like this, which actually their stores are pretty well done, well maintained, nicely designed. Everything is clean and crisp. Like they merch it well, like they do everything well from a retail side, but everything about that is just about like surprise, delight, FOMO, and turn it. And they run out, it's the next thing, which is a very different sort of strategy when you're doing your strategic sourcing, when you're doing your procurement, and then you're doing your retail offers compared to someone else. And it's very difficult to compete against someone that inherently is built on burn, turn, and being in low cost.
I didn't realize my mic cut out and I was talking to you.
Oh.
I was going to say.
I thought you were just amazed by this commentary.
No.
Wow.
If only the website loaded better for me. I don't know what's with. I
think that's a you problem. I'm sure I could go to their website right now and
share your screen there, good sir. Share your screen. Show the audience of this interesting product.
Hold on. Okay. Yeah. See, it loaded for me. Let's give me 1 second. Let me get this set up here. Okay.
While he's doing that, okay, you got it ready?
I think so. Hold on 1 second.
He doesn't usually do the technical stuff.
I don't do this. Yeah, it's wild. Just give me a second.
You can tell the concentration. He's backing
okay.
up.
So there you go.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, see, like that's a you problem. Actually, it's probably a Windows problem. I run on Linux, so I have much more stable kind of stuff. And there's some guy watching the video being like, "Oh, I know everything I need to know about you now." Anyways, but like you can just see like a very different kind of like overall, design and stuff to their
very
product.
IKEA-esque kind of like. There's a few stores like that. The Danes and the Scandinavians do really neat things. There's a lot of cool innovation that they do come up with.
I do agree with you. There actually is a weird problem with their website because it's definitely not scrolling properly.
Yeah. Anyways, but we get
you get the idea. So there you go. So, but I mean, you can see like much more design focused, kind of a different presentation. Again, treasure hunting, which is wildly popular these days. Different type of thing.
To go back on your DoorDash comment, where did it go? Did you see the autonomous? Why is it doing it this way?
I did, yeah. Actually, I wrote a post about that one. Yeah, it blew up actually. I actually had a few people from DoorDash start following me because of it. Yeah, I did see these things like, so, DoorDash investing a few $100 million into designing and developing like sort of different types of AV vehicles for
what's with the concept? Vehicles. What's with the logistics being brought down to delivering coffee? Like I get offended by this. I don't know why. I shouldn't, but I do. That they bring down the gist of logistics. There's someone up there that thinks logistics is just bringing me coffee.
I mean, to be honest with you, someone doing that, it probably just highlights how little they actually understand. When they're like, I'm going to pour this much effort into, one warm beverage, but like, so this one, like I said, the post I wrote about it last week or whatever, like, did get a lot of attention, and the reality is, look, I'm always super split on these things. I think that there's an interesting thing from a network design and from hey, can you do it type thing, and just the problem of it. But the reality is that these things are like, I really don't ever think that they're going to have any real legs or anything like that, because I was even kind of going back and forth in some of my comments with someone about this, and it's like, oh, well, smaller vehicles, you can, you're kind of just in and out, you're doing exactly what you need to do, you're spending less time driving, this, that, and it's like, it's true and stuff like that. But the problem is that, like, I think people often forget the fact that, like, sooner or later, these things will need as much regulation and structure as any other vehicle. Like, you can't just dump 5,000 of these in a busy downtown core and think it's all going to be good. Like, like, it will very quickly hit like a little threshold where it's like, oh, these things need to be managed in terms of like their traffic flow. You know what I mean?
I'm sure we're going to see a comment here in a second about utility. That's why utility is going to get there. We're going to just ship it directly to you. It's going to be right there.
Well, the funny thing is, I actually agree with Robert in the sense of, like, that would work and will work, except for the fact, well, I shouldn't say except, the biggest bottleneck there is just the sheer amount of infrastructure that needs to be created all over the place and in every way for all kinds of different points of access. I mean, like, everyone wants EVs, everyone's trying to push EVs, and the biggest comment is still about, like, yeah, but we can't even build these charging stations above ground, let alone tearing up the ground that you do have to create new infrastructure.
Yeah, but you build fiber optics, like, you do have, fiber optic freaking internet, and that didn't take long. Like, the technology came out, and they laid the wires and they put it all together, and it's giant tubes that were put down. It's not,
except you can get a big benefit when you're running like a cable, like, or a fiber network, where it's like, I can run from these have these key arteries, and then I can branch out. Like, they have substations all over the place. Like, you know what I mean? So, like, the major hookups are done from certain places, and all the telcos had essentially been subsidized for the better part of like 30 years to build all of this, like, quote unquote infrastructure. So it's like they already had access to move a lot of it. Like this house that I'm in now, I ran fiber into it. They had already had the line running into the house. They were just waiting for someone to say they wanted fiber, they wanted some hookup.
I got a prediction for you. Oh, it was playing as I was doing it. Damn it. It's going to look like this. People just Futurama going right through the tube. The utility of it.
Yeah, like I said, I do think that there's, like, opportunities there. I think probably what you would see is the biggest benefit would be some kind of, like, quasi hub and spoke model where, you build a certain infrastructure to, like, main stations, and then from the main stations there's subtypes of deliveries or pickup points or something like that has to happen. But even then, I think the challenge is the fact that, the density comes from a massive amount of independent businesses, right? Some obviously much, much larger than others, but you're still trying to get, like, all of this activity to happen and to move through the system. But, like, nobody nobody wants to own the system, or nobody wants to give someone that much control of the system, or, like, whatever, like, everyone wants shared access and equal and fair access, but, like, then no one's really interested in footing the bill.
And that's the whole oddity of it, right? Because everybody goes, how do we go about doing it? The reason we have roads is because the government pays for them. The government lays them, and we didn't need roads before we had cars. So it was the utility of what the car manufacturers needed for us to be able to do it. Because horse and buggy wasn't as big of a thing as you just had a horse, and he didn't need a proper road. You can run on the grass, right? So the reason we have roads is because the utility was created to help facilitate the movement of people as we went through the system, right? So, I'm curious how these projects develop. I can see that being more seen as a hot take in other places. Like I can see India or China building them before North America does.
Well, that's even a good point. You don't really see a lot of this type of stuff. Like I think I've written about it, I don't know, last year, year and a half ago, China doing things like using their rail network, their subways and stuff like off peak hours, like way off peak hours, like, 2 to 5 a.m., 2 to 4 a.m. or whatever, 1 to 5 a.m. to actually move goods like in a cargo fashion. That kind of stuff to me is like very, very smart, because it's like, hey, I already have a certain infrastructure that has a core need, or has various core needs. I can do people movement, I can do broad-based cargo movement. Now I'm doing parcel style movement or small package style movements, like in off hours where I have capacity, or I still have the equipment. That kind of stuff I think makes sense, because now you're maybe getting 3 different sources of utility/revenue from this asset. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think the subway system idea is a fantastic way of utilization of existing infrastructure to move goods throughout the city. And even during peak hours, with between trains have it attached to the end of it, and it's just a cargo one that gets dropped off.
Yeah, that's true.
Different ways. I remember when I first started off doing LTL, and you probably remember this, John. Remember the Greyhound buses? That used to go everywhere back in it. Like, not so often anymore. We used to fill those up as LTL, because they used to have a lot of space in them as additional LTL to move product across Canada, because they'd be going from Toronto to Vancouver would be one of the trips. They would have stops along the way. You drop some LTL off with them, whether it be parcel or an LTL skid, and they would unload it at that spot because they needed the extra revenue. And it was a very utilization of an existing network that we did often. And I always found that very interesting and neat as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and funny enough, they probably butchered the shit out of that program, but like probably is not able to actually make it work properly. Why'd
you stop?
Right, I forget sometimes that we're not just chatting or whatever. But yeah, I don't know. So I think that's there because in the face of all of these mounting pressures, right? In the same way that we opened, it's like when you have a constant cost pressure about like, oh, that service should cost less, or my percent of, whether you think of it as logistics or transportation or whatever cost, percent of revenue or whatever, needs to continue to go down. You're going to be hard pressed to then build new like that. Like that's the biggest challenge that is going to be there.
How much creativity do you think is going to awaken within the gig worker and maybe middle mile supply chain as there's more pressure on utilization correctly to generate more revenue from a lot of these carriers and vendors? Do you think there's going to be more creativity coming from it? Because I haven't seen it yet, and I'm curious if that's going to start emerging as more of that revenue starts pumping back into the system.
Yeah, I don't know. Honestly, I was going to say, like, for the most part, I would agree with you in the sense that I don't think there's been much creativity at all. Like, taking a traditional capacitized model and kicking it over to a guy in a sedan and paying them less, like, with less volume, less density.
That's not creativity.
Like that's not creativity. That's like, it's like the worst type of line extension you can think of. Like, look at my innovation. It's like, no, you just released a new flavor.
Don't get me wrong. The digitalization of that aspect was interesting when Uber obviously came out and helped take on the taxi business. All that.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, Uber
was very, very, very good.
Yeah, Uber in that sense, like in the initial ride sharing and the design of the platform and getting people to like see, Uber was a good one that really understood like what were the pain points and the discomfort of like customers and stuff like that.
Well, which is how far also they're away from it. They are now, right?
Yeah, very far away from that. But I also think funny enough, you can go and take Uber's playbook, and it's 100% the reason why autonomous taxis are going to take off is just because people will feel more secure, they'll feel more comfortable, they'll want the hassle freeness, the convenience, the ease of all the digital transactions and all of this stuff. Like I'm telling you that this like that's why those things are going to take off, and that's why you got everyone.
It's a swing. It's a pendulum swing. We talked about this too before, when big retailers all of a sudden go private in their fleets because they're so tired of capacity issues or whatever. They start building their own private fleets. And then they build it to a certain level, and then they sell it because they want to go back to a 3PL model because they don't want all the overhead. And you see that cycle constantly going through the system. It's the same thing, right? And you're going to see these kind of attractions to go pull one way. And you see Uber, what it first set off to do is completely different from its mandate that it's doing today. And it's the same thing as with Airbnb. I remember when Airbnb first came out, it was such a brilliant, awesome idea. But now I don't hear any positives about Airbnb because it's been so processed.
But the funny thing is, and this is the problem with the gig network, Airbnb is a great example in the sense of like, it's exactly what happens when you have to keep enough of a distance so that it doesn't look like you're the one responsible, so to speak, that you're just a facilitator, you know, and that's what ends up happening. I actually still think that, you know, the concept of individual like or small base broad innovation that's going to change things a ton. I'm not super sold. I think probably what you're going to continue to see more than that is this, that you're going to see innovation come from continued consolidation and these massive companies more so than the small ones. Like another one that caught my attention, some news was, you know, QXO, right? Mm-hmm. You know, Brad Jacobs, who used to be running like GXO, whatever it was, you know, now running this one or whatever. They just made a massive acquisition of I guess a company called Top Build for $17 billion. And he's still just going diehard at this building material space, like just like dead set on the fact of knowing that like in a world where everything's going digital, like people building assets, building real world stuff are still going to need like a supply chain, so to speak, and a road to market. And he's just doubling down. This is like the fourth or fifth thing that they bought, like for massive amount of money. And Top Build is just saying, sorry, I'm reading some notes that I had set up. Was Top Build is the largest insulation distributor and installer in North America. You know, so they continue to go for this like real world. I have the backbone, I have the infrastructure, I have the way that everything gets to people, and I have people that do it as well. Because he overpaid by quite a bit, like a 20% premium to get this. And again, playing long game here, like, you know, thinking 5-10 years down the road for sure. Oh, fuck this nonsense. Yeah, sorry, Matt put that up. But so there you go. Something like that I think has a real world application versus this kind of joke that you put on the screen. So why don't you take that away since you think this is interesting? Your mic's off again, bro. I caught you this time.
It's every time I share. It doesn't like me sharing. That's not a sharing computer. Anyways, Allbirds is a shoe company. It was like a tech bros San Francisco shoe company. It went from like 0 to $1 billion very quickly, but just as quickly, it died out. And it went
not just as quickly. I mean, they kind of had a bit of a stay, and they really got crushed trying to open physical stores.
Yeah, they went from $1 billion down to like 100 million in like 2 years.
Yeah,
it was a valid point, John. You didn't have
well,
to.
I'm just saying
they didn't have to jaw.
I'm just saying they didn't just vanish per se, because like they tried to really overexpand, and I think that they were way overzealous with like what they thought they were. And what they hit, and the physical stores just crushed them.
Yeah, so they decided to turn around and pivot into an AI company. And part of this, why I saw this kind of come up in my reading, was they need to get away from the environmental aspect of it, because if you're an AI, you can't have an environmental ethos, which the shoes do. So they're rebranding their whole shoe completely to be an AI company.
Yeah, but did you see the rest of this news? Because this is a little bit old.
Okay, what's the rest of the news?
Well, so the rest of the news was that essentially people feel that this was like a pump and dump scheme because their stock surged like 600% in a day. The owners sold their stock, and it has since tanked.
Oh, really? I didn't see that part. That's funny. Not like I'm not laughing at anybody that bought into that, but interesting. It's interesting to see these pump and dumps specifically around AI right now.
Yeah, but see, this is a funny thing. Sorry, just putting up Allbirds though is a very classic retail problem, and I know we're going over time, but I'll use it as my closing thoughts. I was actually super into Allbirds. Like when they first came out, and I was traveling a lot, I was really curious by these Allbirds.
And Allbirds, just keeping track for everybody.
I wanted to buy them, but you couldn't get them in Canada. It was a huge pain. It was like really absurd. but again, you know what ends up, shoes is particularly tough. Like shoes, like apparel, you're building stuff way in advance, and then the more you try to get cute with colors and styles, your inventory just blows up in terms of variants and additional SKUs. And then you start trying to open stores, and now you've got to put inventory everywhere when these guys grew up as a central kind of like DC type fulfillment or whatever. But they, you know, they're probably a good example of like, if they would have stuck to like a lot less is more, they might have had something there.
Less SKUs, less inventory, less everything. Keep it niche, keep it high exclusive. Exclusivity is not a bad thing.
No. And they tried to push way too hard. They leaned way too heavily on the wool uppers on the shoes and stuff like that, trying to make it super sustainable. But like, they didn't really have the same staying powers like synthetics. And I even have some Nike stuff, and there's Adidas stuff where they have now this kind of like sock mesh type top to them. Like it's essentially what Allbirds was like, you know, just even better materials, stronger materials, blah, 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 whatever. So, you know, the second they tried to branch out into everything, it just tanked them. So little word to the wise for any of you smaller e-com brands out there, that you may want to be mindful about how quickly you try to expand, because just because you have more products does not mean you will sell more.
Keeping us honest.
Yes, I am. I see that.
We're on time. As always, thanks everybody for joining us. As always, Hot Bites, a little bit of a first edition freight caviar in my background. Do you have one of those, John? They're super cool.
Oh, you
I
do.
like them.
You
So
do.
I got the next one coming too.
I know you like them.
I think they're quite awesome. I think they do it.
I do admit some of the videos. I forget the founder's name. I don't know if you even
PBJ,
on LinkedIn, but yeah, his stuff. He's usually pretty good with stuff, and you know, some of the work they've done on the actual, like, you know,
the interviews, the journalism, top notch.
Yeah, it's very good.
One day it'll be us, John. We'll be the Canadian version, the Canadian birds.
Nice. There you go. Freight
birds. Freight northern birds. On that note, we'll catch you guys later.